Well, good morning, brothers. Today is March the 6th, and so we turn to the book of Proverbs, chapter 6, for God's daily dose of wisdom. And as I was reading through Proverbs chapter 6, verses 1 through 5 jumped off the page, and they read like this: My son, if you have become surety for your neighbor, have given a pledge for a stranger, if you have been snared with the words of your mouth, have been caught with the words of your mouth, do this then, my son, and deliver yourself. Since you have come into the hand of your neighbor, go humble yourself and importune your neighbor. Give no sleep to your eyes, or slumber to your eyelids. Deliver yourself like a gazelle from the hunter's hand, and like a bird from the hand of the fowler. Interesting words. What's he talking about? Well, in a general sense, he's talking about not going into debt. But in a more specific sense, he's saying, don't go into debt for your neighbor. If you have become surety for your neighbor, have given a pledge for a stranger. In other words, don't become collateral for your neighbor. Don't be a guarantor for your neighbor's dealings. If your neighbor is pledging himself, don't guarantee that loan. Don't become a cosigner on a loan for your neighbor, or a cosigner on a loan for a stranger. Now, why would he say that? What is the principle here that he's talking about? And I believe what he's talking about here is that our generosity, our blessing other people, needs to come from a place where we are not under obligation. Because the blessings that we give to other people, as we bless other people, we want to make sure that it's not coming from a place of obligation. Remember that all the things that we do, our imperatives, come from a place of who we are, our indicatives. And as God gives, he's under no obligation to anyone. As he blesses, as he's generous, he doesn't do so out of a sense of obligation. He does so out of a sense of blessing, since that's who he is. And that's the same sort of attitude that we need to have when we are being a blessing to other people, when we're being generous to other people. So I think that's the principle that he's talking about here. But there's even more to what he's talking about. When he says, okay, so don't do that, but if you find yourself in that position, what do you do to remedy the situation? Well, it's an interesting juxtaposition of words. He says, go humble yourself and importune your neighbor. I got to admit, I didn't know what that word importune meant. I'm reading out of the New American Standard. And so I dug deep into that, and I found that importune means to act arrogantly, to act strongly, with pride. It's, another commentator said, it's like storming the castle. You're storming your neighbor. Now, why would he say humble yourself and then act arrogantly towards your neighbor? That didn't make any sense to me. So what I typically do in those kinds of situations, I find other places where that word is used to try and find if that will shed some light as to what the meaning of that word is in this context. And I found in Psalms 138, verse 3, this verse that uses the same word. David is writing, and he says, on the day I called, you answered me and made me bold, there's that word, with strength in my soul. Okay, that helps us to understand what he means when he says to humble yourself and importune our neighbor. Because right after that, he says, give no sleep to your eyes, nor slumber to your eyelids. Deliver yourself like a gazelle from the hunter's hand, and like a bird from the hand of the fowler. Now, later in Proverbs 6, he's going to talk about the sluggard, and he's talking about looking to the ant and not letting slumber or sleep fall to our eyes. So in context, then, what he's saying is, if you find yourself in that position where you have become surety for your neighbor, or you have given a pledge for a stranger, go to your neighbor humbly and work your tail off and get out of that obligation. Don't allow that obligation to become a burden to you. Do whatever you can, short of something illegal or immoral, to free yourself from that obligation. The only person that can pay the debt of another, for me, the debt was my sin. And the person that paid that debt was Jesus Christ. And it took him going to the cross at Calvary in order to pay that debt. That is a larger picture of what he's talking about here in Proverbs. Don't go into debt for your neighbor. But if you do find yourself in that situation, do whatever you can in order to free yourself. I will be forever in debt to my Lord because he paid the penalty for my sin. My brothers, I love you. Each and every one of you. Go out and make a difference in someone's life today. God bless you.